seems this week that what we get is we get an understanding of what Juha Works' powers are, also the relationship between him and Hashwolds, and the connection between Juha and all the Quincy's, further establishing on that. So anyways guys, I'm going to dive into this right after my review, well during my review, and right after that intro. What's going on? It's your boy Shin Megami X, aka Captain X, here today to review Bleach chapter 565 entitled A God Like You. Alright, that being said, what this chapter mainly consisted of was a lot of dialogue, quite heavy on dialogue, and in the very beginning of this chapter, it wasn't very strong on visuals. And what I mean by that is, if you remember the first couple pages, where it's literally just a black silhouette explaining about Juha Works and how his powers work as a child. So that being said, it felt like in the beginning of the chapter that he wasn't even reading Bleach. It felt like he was reading any run-of-the-mill anime that was explaining some next ideology or some next mythology about one particular guy or god in that sense. So that being said, the very beginning of this chapter of Bleach I wasn't very impressed with. But then when we finally get to see the visuals and when we see Uryu and Hashwolds having a slight, I wouldn't say disagreement, but slight disagreement / confrontation, about, you know, Juha Works and all the things to do with the Stern Raiders and whatnot, that Hashwolds basically unveils that Uryu's intentions were basically to avenge his mother, that he should more or less throw that out the window, and he explains why. What we get is an explanation of how Juha Works' powers work and how his relationship with the Quincy's exactly work too. That being said, it is now evident to see that Juha is in fact the father of all Quincy's, which we already knew from previous chapters, stated a long time ago in the series and from other mangas. But what we also understand is exactly how that connection works. It can work simply by touching him, or it can work by you literally drinking or intaking some of his blood, which makes a stronger connection, which makes more sense because it's part of him going inside you rather than just physical contact. Yeah, moving on. So what I thought was really interesting is the fact that no matter who dies in this war, Juha Works will inevitably grow stronger. And obviously, if nobody dies, either it be Quincy or Shinigami or anyone who's come in contact with him, he'll basically lose all his senses and become immobilized and unable to do anything, like an infant child, just without its senses. So that being said, what Juha is also reminding me of, he does remind me of, it is kind of like a god, because it's the father of all Quincy, so he's kind of like the Jesus figure as far as the Quincy's go, because, you know, he basically granted miracles to the Quincy's just by touching him, which is something that is very similar to the Bible. And for those of you Christians, we know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, whatever, have some read up about it, and then you understand what I'm talking about. So that being said, what else I also found was interesting, that he also is very similar to Ares, the god of war, because this war, well, this conflict between Shinigami and Quincy is in fact fueling Juha Works' powers. And it makes you wonder, like, is this war literally just to fuel his powers, or does he have another agenda? Because it doesn't quite make sense, because although we do know that, yeah, the Quincy's were slaughtered over 1,000 years ago and they had a conflict with the Shinigami because of the ways that they kill Hollows. That being said, is that a reason for you to continue a war and hold all that malice for over 1,000 years? Because 1,000 years is a long time. So that being said, you need to ask the question, is Juha Works really only in this for himself? And just using the Quincy's and their conflict just as a means to grow stronger and become even more of a godlike figure? Because it's just evident to see whoever dies here, whether it be Shinigami or Quincy or anyone who's coming in physical contact with Juha, will just have their powers go to Juha. So that means if in the very stupidly unlikely event that Ichigo was to die, Ichigo's powers would eventually go to Juha. So anybody who's come in physical contact with Juha will have their powers return to Juha. So that being said, so that means Juha didn't actually need to steal Yamamoto's Bankai. So if Juha actually just killed him, just by touching him physically, he would have absorbed his powers anyway. So that just goes to show you how dangerous Juha Works is, and in fact that he may truly be the final villain. Because by the time this war ends and anybody truly figures it out in time to do anything about it, such as Ichigo and the rest of the gang, would it be too late to stop Juha? I personally think yes, because I actually see him becoming so powerful that people of the likes of Aizen will eventually be no match for him, simply because of the amount of powers that he absorbed. We've seen that things like this happen in other comic books and other series throughout history, where the main villain absorbs so much power that they basically end up destroying themselves because they can't control that power. But would that be the case with Juha Works? It's unlikely, but it's a possibility that we can't exactly rule out as of yet. So as for this chapter, I say this chapter was a very good chapter of Bleach, simply because it was a refreshing break from what we're used to seeing, you know, the epic fights that we had with Renji and Master Masculine, and Master Masculine dropping everybody for the past couple of chapters. It was something that was quite evidently needed, and is a refreshing break. And also having some, you know, a dialogue heavy chapter is something that helps for story progression and character development. So I wouldn't say we got so much story progression here. Well, we did get story progression because now it's moved from night to day. But that was only done for symbolic reasons to show that, you know, Juha is becoming more powerful because of the conflict. But what is good about this chapter is that we get character development for Juha Works, because we now understand his powers even better. So it's going to lead up a whole lot of speculation along Bleach forum sites and whatnot, but it's good because it's what keeps us talking, it's what keeps us interested and engaged, and what keeps us true fans of this series wanting more and keep coming back. So this review seems very, very short, and I was about to end it here, but sorry for the jump cut, guys, but basically I just went and reread the chapter for like the 6th time just to make sure there was something that I didn't miss in this chapter review. I also thought it was interesting what Hashworld said to Uryu, that basically that him and Juha are two opposite sides of the scale. So that basically whenever Juha becomes the father of all Quincy's when he rests, when he sleeps, obviously Hashworld takes on the role as the overall ruler of the Quincy's, because he is Star Knight B, and he is the, you know, the I believe it was Grand Emperor of Grand Master or something like that of the Quincy's. So I did think that was interesting. Now I'm wondering what exactly is the connection between Juha and Hashworld's, because we do know that Hashworld's letter B stands for the balance, and I wonder what that balance means, because it was somewhat hinted at in a few chapters ago where he was taking out his own men, such as Kangdu and BG9. That, okay, basically it works on something to do with fortune and misfortune. So basically the luckier you are, basically you're going to have bad luck in return. So essentially karma. So what does that have to do with the relationship between Juha Works and Hashworld, and the relationship with them two and the rest of the Quincy's? So it's evident to see that Quincy's are all interconnected. So, and also another thing that was interesting as well is that Juha called Uryu the last living Quincy. So that was somewhat confusing as well, because yes, we do know that Yamamoto essentially killed Juha Works about 1,000 years ago, but obviously didn't quite finish the job. So how is it that the rest of these Quincy's come to be about? Were these Quincy's Quincy's that were alive and were dying by the battle that they took on with the Shinigami, and that they basically took some of Juha's blood, and then now they have all their powers rejuvenated and whatnot? Well, they have Juha's powers inside them, and that's how they're able to fight as Stern Ridders, as elite soldiers of the Vandenreich. Is that something that is going on? Because I'm quite evidently just don't know, but I'm just making a speculation here. So yeah, I did think that was another interesting point in the chapter, the relationship between Juha Works and Hashworld and the rest of the Quincy's. So anyways guys, I think that'll wrap up my review for this week. It's your boy Shinigami X, aka Captain X. Before I go, let me know if I missed anything that you'd like me to talk about in the comment section below. But anyways guys, as I was about to say, it's your boy Shinigami X, aka Captain X. I'm signing out, and as always my people, take care and peace, man.